In lesson number 1, we discussed what multiplication means. And we said that multiplication means groups of. Let's take a moment and review. If we have a problem like 3 times 2, we can consider this to mean that we have 3 groups of 2. Then what we did is we said, let's draw a group of 2. Here we have a group of 2. How many of these groups do we need? We need 3 groups. Now we have 3 groups of 2. Count the dots. 3 times 2 equals 6. That's what we learned last time. Now, in life, when do we actually use multiplication? Well, it turns out that you can use multiplication in a lot of real-world kinds of situations. For instance, say you're trying to figure out how much paint you need to paint the walls of a room. Well, that problem is going to involve multiplication. Say you want to figure out how many tiles you need to buy to tile the floor of a bathroom. Well, that problem will involve multiplication also. Say that you are doing your taxes and you need to figure out how much tax you owe the government. Well, that problem will also involve multiplication. Multiplication is used often in real life. It's also going to be used often in your math as you go through school. It's going to be used when you study fractions, decimals, percents, even when you study algebra, geometry, etc. So what we want to do is understand multiplication at a very deep fundamental level and learn to use it effectively. In our second lesson, what we want to do is this. We want to learn to multiply by the number 1. And we also want to study how we can use what's called the commutative property of multiplication. Let's start with multiplying by 1. Often in math, one of the things that really helps us is our common sense. If we're looking at problems where we are multiplying by 1, let's start off with some simple problems involving multiplying by 1. For instance, suppose we have this. Very straightforward problem. Here we have one group of 2. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and draw the picture. It's a group of 2. We have one group. Count the dots. Answer 2. Let's try another one, but make this number slightly bigger. One group of 3. So we have a group of 3. But we have one of these groups right here. Count the dots, we get an answer of 3. Let's make this number slightly bigger. Ladies and gentlemen, I want you to try that one on your own. Of course, pause the video. Wonderful. Hopefully, you got an answer of 4. Let's take a look at this. Here we have one group of 4. Here's our one group. Our answer is 4. Now, patterns. What we want to do is we want to study these problems and see if we can find a quick way of doing these problems without drawing any pictures at all. And make sure that that way makes sense. So let's focus in on this question. After you hear this question, I want you to pause and think about this. The question is this. What do you notice about the answer to each one of these problems compared with the original problem itself? Please pause your video. Okay. Hopefully, one of the things that you determined is whatever you have for your answer is the same as one of these numbers. And it's not going to be the 1 here. For instance, here we have an answer of 2. That's the same as this number. In the second problem, we have an answer of 3. That's the same as this number. In the last one, we have an answer of 4. That's the same as this number. But the question is why? I want you to pause the video and think about why. Okay. Our question was, why is our answer the same as this number? And one thing that you've probably figured out is because you only have one group each time. And if you only have one group of 4, for instance, then your group is going to only have 4 dots, and you only need one of those groups. And so those 4 dots are all that we have. And so the answer is 4. I want you to give that some thought. Perhaps pause your video right now. Talk to your parent or your tutor. Now, let's go ahead and take a look at some practice. I want you to go ahead and try these problems, see how you do. I want you to go ahead and quickly go through these problems, and then we'll go through these together. So please pause your video. Okay, let's take a look at these right here. We got one group of 5. It's a group of 5. We know the answer is just going to be the same as the number that is not the 1. So this will be 5. For the next one, hopefully you got an answer of 7. For the last one, hopefully your answer was 12. All right. What I want to do last here is take a look at something that we need to make sure we understand at this point in time, which is the commutative property of multiplication. It sounds like a mouthful. It sounds like it could be rather complicated, but the idea is going to be very simple and very, very important, especially as you reach higher levels of math. Let's take a look. Suppose that you were asked to choose a gift for yourself from a party, and you had 2 choices. You could choose 2 groups of 4 quarters or 4 groups of 2 quarters. Let's write this down. Which one of these is going to be the most money? Well, one thing that we can do is we can go ahead and try to draw a picture and figure this out. I want you to pause your video right now and see what you can determine. If you're looking at the student edition, please don't turn your page. Okay, let's go ahead and work through this together. Here we have 2 groups of 4 quarters. What does that look like? Well, we know that we have groups of 4. And for each quarter, I'm going to use the letter Q. One group of 4 quarters, but we need a second group of 4 quarters. And I think it's very clear if we have 2 groups of 4 quarters, this is really 2 groups of means times 4. So we have 2 times 4. And the answer to this is going to end up being equal to, count your quarters, 8. Let's look at the other option. Here we have 4 groups of 2 quarters. Let's go ahead and draw these. These are groups of 2. So we have 4 groups of 2 quarters. If we add them up all together right here, I think it's very clear that when we sum these, we're going to end up getting a total of 8. So 4 groups of right over here means times. 4 times 2 equals 8. So which gift is the most money? Well, I think it's very clear that they're the same amount of money. Each gift is 8 quarters. But this suggests that 2 groups of 4 is the same as 4 groups of 2. In other words, 2 times 4 equals 4 times 2. And this simple idea is called the commutative property of multiplication. The commutative, and I'll abbreviate here, property of multiplication. Now, what does this commutative property actually say? Well, when you have 2 numbers that you're multiplying, it doesn't matter which number comes first. So, if you're multiplying 2 times 4, you can put the 2 first, or the 4 actually could be in this first spot. But if the 4 is in the first spot, then the 2 goes to the second spot. So 2 times 4 equals, you just switch the order, 4 times 2. Why is this important? The reason this is important is because this cuts in half what you need to learn with your multiplication facts. Let's go ahead and do a few examples. We want to rewrite each using our commutative property of multiplication. Let's do the first one together. Here we have 4 times 8. Our commutative property tells us that we can go ahead and switch the order right here and make this into 8 first and then the 4 last. So 8 times 4. I want you to go ahead and try these other 2 on your own just the same way. Please pause it. Thank you. Okay. As we look at this next one right here, hopefully your answer was 9 times 3. Again, what we're going to do, switch the order right here. 9 first, 3 goes to the last spot. The last one here, hopefully you got an answer of 5 times 7 by doing the same thing, switching the order. All right, so let's go ahead and just take a moment and recap. When we are multiplying by 1, we know the answer is not going to be the number 1, but it's going to be the other number that you multiply 1 by. The second part, the commutative property says that when you're multiplying 2 numbers, it doesn't matter which number you write in the first spot and which number you write in the second spot. So you could switch the order and you'll still have the same final answer, that these 2 will be equal to each other. Now you're ready for your Lesson 2 practice worksheet. Please work that through and please have that graded. And soon we will be coming up with Lesson 3 where we go through multiplying by 0 and also multiplying by 2.